Picture the store shelves bare. Not for a day, for weeks. It happened in 1932, and it's happened in living memory more than once since a storm, a strike, a bad winter, and suddenly the shelf where the soup used to be is just a row of price tags and dust. The folks who panicked went hungry. The folks who had a jar of this on the shelf at home didn't even notice. For a few dollars you can put up a dry soup mix that genuinely keeps 5 years and longer, with no fridge, no freezer, no power. And when you need it, it's a hot, real pot of soup in 20 minutes. This is the one I trust most of any recipe I make, and I'll tell you exactly why. Let me hand it to you whole. I'm Wendell. I've been putting food by for 50 years, and there's a year of dinners on my cellar shelf right now with not 1 watt of power on them. I'm no chef and never claimed to be, just an old hand who's dried a lot of soup and learned, the hard way, the difference between what really keeps and what just sounds good on a video. And here's the honest reason I trust this one above all the canned ones you'll see. A lot of survival videos out there will show you canning up meat and calling it a 5-year food, and some of them get the safety dead wrong in a way that can hurt somebody. This recipe sidesteps the whole danger. It's dried. There is no water in it, and where there's no water, nothing can grow. No mold, no bacteria, no botulism, none of it. That's not my opinion. That's the plain law of food, old as the first dried fish on the first drying rack. Take the water out, and food simply cannot spoil. So this is the genuinely safe, genuinely shelf-stable one, the one I'd stake my name on, and that's why it earns its space on the shelf. Now, straight to the building of it. My grandma Ada dried what she couldn't can. She had a warming shelf above the wood stove and an old window screen she'd lay things on in the sun, a cloth over the top to keep the flies off, and by the end of every summer she had bags and jars of dried beans, dried sweet corn, dried onion, dried apple, dried greens. Everything the garden gave her, put up small and light and safe from the weather. She didn't have a dehydrator or a vacuum sealer. She had sun, salt, and patience. In the dead of a hard winter, she'd reach into that pantry, take a handful of this and a handful of that, drop it in a pot of water over the fire, and feed the whole table out of what looked to anyone else like a sack of dry scraps. She used to say the dry pantry was the one the weather couldn't touch and the bank couldn't take. So let me build you the jar she'd build, with what you can get today. Start with the bones of any good soup, all of it dried. The base and the heart of the nutrition is beans and lentils. They're cheap, they're filling, they're honest protein, and dried beans already store for years all on their own. Split peas, red and green lentils, navy beans, pinto, black beans, whatever your family actually eats. Lentils and split peas are the friendliest because they cook fast and don't even need soaking. Then the vegetables, and these you dry yourself or buy already dried. Dried onion, dried carrot, dried celery, dried tomato, dried sweet corn, dried green beans, dried mushroom, dried potato if you like it hearty. Then the seasoning that turns a sack of dry goods into an actual soup. A bay leaf, garlic powder, onion powder, salt, black pepper, a little dried parsley, thyme, maybe a pinch of red pepper if your family likes it warm. And if you want a grain to stretch one jar even further, a small handful of pearl barley or white rice. A rough ratio that works. About half the jar beans and grain, half dried vegetables and seasoning. Suit it to your own table. That's the whole point of making it yourself. If you're drying the vegetables yourself, it's simple, and it's the old way. Slice them thin and even, and thin is everything, because a thick piece holds water in its middle, and that hidden water is the one thing that can ruin a whole jar. Some vegetables do better blanched first, a quick dip in boiling water, then straight into cold. Carrots, corn, green beans, and peas hold their color and keep better blanched, while onions, mushrooms, tomatoes, and herbs you can dry straight. Lay them in a single layer on dehydrator trays or on racks in a low oven with the door cracked, and dry them low, around 125 to 135 degrees, until they're hard or brittle and snap clean. Not leathery, not bendy, not cool and damp in the center. Leathery means moisture is still hiding in there. Carrots should rattle on the tray. Onions should crackle. Tomatoes go to leather or all the way to crisp. When in doubt, dry it longer. You cannot over-dry a vegetable for storage, but you can surely under-dry one and pay for it. And here's a step the old hands knew that most folks skip: conditioning. Once it's dry, loosely fill a jar 2/3 full, cap it, and shake it once a day for a week. If you see any moisture beading on the glass, it wasn't dry enough. Back to the trays it goes. If it stays clear and dry all week, it's ready for the long haul. Now I'll give you one honest warning, because an old hand owes you the plain truth and not just the pretty parts. If you want meat in your dry soup, you can add dried meat. But dried meat is its own careful business, and it is not a casual thing to toss in. Real, shelf-stable jerky has to be made right. Lean meat only, no fat, dried hot enough and thoroughly enough that no moisture and no bacteria live through it, and the surest long-keepers add a proper curing step with the right cure. A scrap of home-dried fatty meat thrown in casual will turn rancid from the fat in a few months and can carry real risk besides. So here's my plain counsel, the same I'd give my own grandchildren. Keep this soup a bean and vegetable soup for your 5-year jar. That's where the 5 years is honest and safe, and I'll stand behind it. If you want meat in the bowl, add it fresh from a can or fresh from your kitchen on the day you actually cook the soup, not down into the dry jar months before. That one rule keeps the danger out and the shelf life real. Once everything is bone dry and conditioned, you build the jar. Layer your beans and grain and dried vegetables and seasoning into a clean, bone-dry quart jar. Layered up, it looks handsome enough to give as a gift, and folks do. Now the part that makes it keep 5 years instead of 1. Dry food has only 4 enemies: moisture, air, light, and heat. Beat all 4 and it lasts. The surest honest way for the long haul is a Mylar bag with an oxygen absorber sealed inside, then tucked into a food-grade bucket with a lid. That's your genuine 5-year and beyond storage. The oxygen absorber is the quiet hero. It's a little packet that pulls the air out of the bag, and with the air gone, the last things that could ever spoil it are starved right out. For a quart-sized portion, a 300cc absorber does the job. Size up for a bigger bag. You heat seal the Mylar across the top with a clothes iron, and you're done. If you'd rather keep it in a glass jar so you can see it on the shelf, that's fine too. Keep the jar truly airtight. Drop a small oxygen absorber in. Store it in a cool, dark cupboard, and it'll still give you years. Just keep it out of the light. Cool and dark is no small thing. The very same jar that keeps 5 years in a cool cellar might give you only 2 in a hot, bright pantry over the stove. Heat is the thief that steals shelf life quietest. And label every one. Write the date on every jar and every bag, plain and bold. The old folks never guessed. They knew to the month what went up when. Rotate your stock, oldest to the front, newest to the back. Eat as you store and store as you eat. And a dry pantry will quietly feed your family for years without a single thing going to waste. When the day comes that you need it, the cooking is the easy part, and it's forgiving. Tip the jar into a pot. Cover it with about 3 times its depth in water. Dry goods drink a lot back. Bring it up to a boil, then drop it to a slow simmer and let it go until the beans are tender. That's an hour to an hour and a half for most beans, and if you remember to soak the beans overnight first, it cuts that near in half and they cook more even. The dried vegetables drink the water back up and come alive. The beans go soft and creamy. The broth thickens on its own from the starch, and what was a dry handful in a jar becomes a full, hot, honest pot of soup that smells like a sundae. Taste it near the end and adjust your salt. 1 quart jar feeds a family, a good meal, sometimes 2. That's the whole trick the Depression ran on, and the trail before it. Make it small and dry to store, add the water back to eat. Set that against the modern way a minute. The store would have you buy a soup 3 times a week, forever, and own nothing for it but the empty cans. The old kitchen put up a winter of soup once, in an afternoon, and then forgot the store had a door. One way keeps you needing them. The other sets you free. I've got nothing against a grocery store. It has its place. But a full, dry shelf is the one thing on God's earth it cannot sell you. Let me be straight about what this is, because I won't oversell it the way some do. It's beans, vegetables, and seasoning. Real food, real protein, real fiber, cheap and filling and warm in a cold week. That's all true, and that's plenty. It is not a vitamin. It's not a cure. It won't detox a thing or fix what ails you. And any fellow who tells you a bowl of soup is medicine is reaching for your wallet. It's food that keeps. In a hard winter, food that keeps is worth more than gold, just like the title says. And unlike a good many survival claims you'll hear shouted at you, this 5-year number is one I'll put my name on, because dry food kept truly dry genuinely does last that long and longer. Now the one honest caution, so you trust your own jars and don't second-guess a good one. 5 years assumes it's truly dry, truly sealed, and kept cool and dark. Do those 3 and it's real. But if a jar ever feels damp inside, if the contents clump together or go soft, if you see the faintest fuzz of mold or smell anything sour, then it pulled moisture somewhere along the way. And that one jar goes in the trash. No argument, no tasting. That's not the recipe failing you. That's a seal that failed, and it's why we condition and date and check. A jar that stays hard, dry, and rattling is good for the long haul, and you cook from it with a clear mind. When in doubt, throw that one out. I'm honestly curious, so tell me down in the comments. Has your family ever leaned on a dry pantry through a hard stretch? A cellar full of jars, a grandmother who dried the garden every fall? And where are you watching from? I do like knowing how far these old ways still travel, and how many kitchens still remember them. Next time, I'll show you how Grandma Ada took a whole summer's worth of tomatoes and dried them down into a fine red powder that became soup, sauce, and seasoning all winter long out of one little jar. No canner, no cold, no waste. It's the natural next step after today. Until next time, keep your jars clean, keep your salt dry, and remember, the folks who fed a family through the Depression with $2 and no icebox knew things were only just starting to need again.